Hello, it's Eric Lavin, and we're going to be continuing our blog, our Fangraphs blog, in which we're going to dive into the Fangraphs website and going to be exploring advanced statistics and explaining different types of statistics and how they're used. So I decided to record this video as a screen recording with my voice as an overlay because today we're not so much going to look at how to solve these formulas, but instead we're going to understand the statistic itself. We're now at our third blog post, which means, things are going to start getting a little more advanced. So, we don't really have to understand the specifics, mathematical equations of these formulas, because quite honestly, they're too difficult and there's way too many factors that go into them. So, without further ado, let's begin. So, our first statistic that we're going to be looking at is something called WAR. Now, as we look at Shohei Ohtani's Fangraph page, we see this little section right here, WAR. So, WAR is a statistic otherwise known as wins above replacement, and it's essentially compares a player to a league average player, which, a replacement level player would theoretically, in this situation, have a 0 WAR. So, this stat takes into account a player's offensive production, defensive production, base running, playing time, you name it. So, of course, the best players in the league tend to have the highest WAR. Now, you could be an offensive powerhouse. You could be somebody who hits for great average, great power, but you could be the worst defender in the league, and you will probably have a lower WAR than somebody who may just be a good hitter and just a good defender and good base runner. So WAR sort of looks at the player from an aerial point of view and looks at all of their skills combined and takes into account every single, basically movement they have on the baseball diamond. So a league average WAR is around 2. So again, these last two blog posts, I think, if you don't know anything about baseball statistics, I think you could just see just how insane Shohei Ohtani's production is. This is truly a generational talent. Shohei Ohtani's WAR in 2023 was 6.6. Meanwhile, he also missed 27 games. So that's incredible. 6.6 WAR, and that's just offensively. Now, Ohtani, again, WAR is not a stat that is designated for only offensive players. This is a stat that takes into account for pitchers as well. So Ohtani's WAR is interesting. Ohtani is going to basically always be a league leader in WAR because he pitches and he hits. So he's two different positions, basically just combining the two WARs together. He's an above average pitcher and he's an above average hitter, which makes him just an unreal baseball talent. So WAR is essentially just a valuable tool that both fans, GMs, front offices use to gauge just how overall balanced and skilled a player is. It's not too hard to wrap your head around once you start understanding it. And again, once you see more baseball player statistics and you see, you sort of start to get a range of just what exactly is a good WAR and what is a bad WAR. So, in my opinion, you are an above average player if you lie a little above that 4.5 range. And anything below 2, you're most likely either a backup or a below average, baseball player. So WAR is an awesome stat, and WAR is also very interesting because at the end of players' careers, you can add up their WAR totals throughout every single season they played, and you could compare the best players, of all time. So, for example, let's look at Barry Bonds, who is widely regarded as the greatest hitter in baseball history. There's steroids or whatever, but statistically, his stats are the most impressive. So we're going to look at Barry Bonds. And his career WAR is 164.4. So that means through the 2,986 games that he played, he accumulated 164.4 WAR. Basically meaning, he's 164.4 WAR over a replacement level player, if that makes sense. So WAR is definitely a useful stat. It's a fun stat. It's fun if you're using it to compare players from different eras and just to see how good they were. It kind of takes all the players' stats and combines them into one simple stat rather than having to look at average, on base percentage, slugging percentage, home runs, doubles, whatever, stolen bases. You can instead account a player's skill, overall through one simple statistic, which is WAR. Okay, so the next baseball statistic we're going to be looking at is WRC plus, otherwise known as weighted runs created plus. So before we understand what WRC plus is, we're going to have to look at WOBA, which is to the left of WRC plus. So in 2023, Shohei Ohtani had a WRC plus of 180 and a WOBA of 433. So WOBA is weighted on-base average, in which it takes into account all the outcomes of a potential at-bat. So a single, or a walk, a single, double, triple, home run, hit by pitch, and basically values the highest, the most desirable outcome, the highest compared to the least desirable outcome, in which case would probably be a walk or a single. So it's going to value a single more than a walk, a double more than a single, a triple more than a double, and a home run more than anything, because a home run is the only outcome in which there is a guaranteed run scored. So WRC Plus takes WOBA and also adds baseball factors, or ballpark factors, such as shifts, such as sea level, ballpark dimensions, and uses these factors to sort of gauge a player's offensive performance throughout a season. So an interesting part of baseball is that all ballparks have different dimensions. No two ballparks look the same. For instance, Fenway Park, home of the Boston Red Sox, their left field is very close and their fence is super high, otherwise known as the Green Monster, making it more desirable for lefty or for righty pull hitters who will pull the ball to left field rather than a lefty who will most likely pull a ball to right field. So these different ballpark factors can give different teams advantages compared to other teams. So WRC Plus combines WOBA and those ballpark factors and uses a benchmark of 100 as, to represent a league average offensive player. So just as WAR uses 0 WAR as a replacement level player, a replacement level player would be 100 WRC plus. So as we can see, Ohtani is 80% better than a league average player. If he were at 200 WRC plus, which some players have had seasons where they are over 200 WRC plus, means they are twice as good as a league average player. So Ohtani, again, he has had an unbelievable season in 2023. He hit for great average. He hit home runs. He hit a lot of doubles. He got walked. So his WRC plus is very high. Now, WRC plus provides a more nuanced and context-sensitive measure of a player's offensive abilities compared to a stat such as batting average, on-base percentage, even slugging percentage. WRC plus essentially looks at every single offensive outcome and weighs it compared to a league average, which would be 100. So it is possible to have a WRC plus lower than 100. That means you're producing worse than a league average player. So WRC plus is a very good way of just really calculating how efficient a player is at hitting the ball and producing runs at the same time. Because at the end of the day, it's not hits that win baseball games, it's runs that win baseball games. So WRC plus really calculates that, really gives just a representation of an offensive player's performance. And it's a very valuable tool, and a lot of scouts, a lot of front office people consider it to be their favorite stat just because of the fact that it looks at a player's overall offensive prowess rather than a specific, such as batting average or on-base percentage. So now that we understand statistics in baseball, let's look at a player and let's deem whether he's a good player, a bad player, or a mediocre player. So we're going to look at Corey Seager, who's a shortstop on the Texas Rangers, who are currently in the World Series and have a 3-1 lead. Let's look at his statistics and let's deem whether he's good or not, just based off what we've learned throughout this blog session. So, in 2023, Corey Seager had 33 home runs, 327 batting average, 390 on base percentage. His slugging percentage was 623. His WRC plus was 169, and he had 6.1 WAR. So, just looking off these stats, let's look at his batting average first. 327 batting average. Batting average, that's a very high batting average. Remember, we said, anywhere really above 300 is considered a very good hitter, and he had 327, which means he definitely was good at hitting in 2023. But remember, batting average is not the only stat, and sometimes, it's inaccurate towards how good a player was. So let's look at his on-base percentage. He had a 390 on-base percentage, essentially meaning 39% of his at-bats he was getting on base, whether it be through a hit or through a walk. Now, his slugging percentage, 623, so that means Corey Seager definitely raked. And his WRC plus was 169, meaning that he was 69% better than a league average player. And finally, his 6.1 WAR means that he had a great season. Remember, we said, a mediocre player usually gets around 2 WAR. Yeah, he got 6.1 WAR. So Corey Seager, as just based off his statistics alone, we can deem that Corey Seager is a good hitter and had a good 2023 season. Catcher for, coincidentally, the Texas Rangers as well. So we're going to deem whether Austin Hedges is a good, bad, or mediocre baseball player based off his statistics. So Hedges in 2023 had a 184 batting average, 234 on base percentage, a 227 slugging percentage, 24 WRC plus, and .8 WAR in 82 games. So he played half the games available to him during the season. So his batting average was 184, which is probably good to say that he's not a good hitter. But let's look at his other, baseball statistics. His on-base percentage was 234, meaning he only got on base 23% of the time, which is lower than most players' batting average. And his WRC plus is really what, really the nail in the coffin when determining how good of a baseball player he is. Austin Hedges had a 24 WRC plus, meaning he was 76% worse than a league average hitter, which is just unfathomably bad. And his .8 WAR is basically just due to his defensive prowess. He is an slightly above average defender, which gives him .8 WAR. But if he was not a good defender at all, or if he was just a designated hitter, Austin Hedges would easily be one of the least productive offensive players in baseball. Obviously, it's not going to be that obvious when a player is that bad or that good. I really chose 2 outliers just to make it simple. But baseball statistics really can change our entire perspective of the game without having to watch every single at-bat, every single ground ball, every single catch in the outfield to deem whether a player is good or not. You could simply just look at a couple of statistics and really generate an idea of just how valuable a player is to an organization or a team. And of course, there are things such as leadership, such as, attitude that don't show up in the stat book. But simply looking off the statistics, we can really gauge probably around 80% of a player's value to a team. I just want to thank you for tuning along. I know I learned a lot throughout this process. I hope you also learned a lot as well when it comes to baseball statistics. I hope my explanations were clear. I hope they were concise. I hope you understood them. And I really had a blast making these blog posts. So, yeah. Those are my thoughts on Fangraphs. That's my journey through the Fangraphs website and what I've learned and what I've taught myself, really, how to understand a player's value to a baseball team. Thank you.